a family situation. And so I'm just really glad that she had the PowerPoint done, because otherwise you'd have to look at me and that wouldn't be very pleasant. So as we start to roll this out, we've talked about a lot of these things before. We'll just move through some of the things in the slide. We do have people from Facts here, and they will also be part of the presentation this morning. And again, we are working with them. So hopefully everybody is in. Okay, so before we start, we are recording. We will put the slides and the presentation up on the web page. There'll actually be 3 sections to the web page, I think. One for the ARPANES money, one for the Gear 2 money, and one for the GAP funding money. We'll pause between the sections of the presentation for you guys to ask some questions if you need them. Hopefully we answer them as we go through the presentation. And so when we get all done, you won't have any. I do want you to notice that Jen stole my drum roll guy from yesterday's email and put it into this presentation. So thank her very much for noticing that. And I noticed that she's now using her new official title. So if you see her, you have to give a bad time. I don't know what comptroller is, but I'm sure it's important. Okay. Well, yeah, we're going to talk about the programs that are available, a little bit about the application results, the timeline, and then we're going to turn everything over to Facts. As we've been through this a little bit before, EANS 1 was about $17 million in aid, allowed for direct services and assistance and reimbursement. ARPANES 2, which is the one that we're talking about now, required us to do something different with our allocation or our distribution of funds to account for a significant poverty percentage, and reimbursement is prohibited under that section. And keep in mind, we are going to be doing a grant that does allow for reimbursement. So we get into the funding, the services and assistance themselves. $17 million in ARPANES money. A lot of you asked me questions about the 22% or higher and said our school is not that high. And just keep in mind, that was a number that we used coming from the public schools, not free and reduced percentages, to get all of you to be eligible. It doesn't necessarily mean everybody was going to get money, but at least there was a chance we were going to be able to get you money. We're targeting low income, so lowest income schools should get a significant amount of money from this. Reimbursement is prohibited. Know that this grant ends on September 30th of 2024. All of your funds have to be expended. Things have to be paid by that date. For the Gear 2 funds, there were 2 priorities. The first priority was for schools who are not being served under ARPANES. There are, I think as of yesterday, and I haven't looked on today's final version, there was 1 school that qualified under this provision that was not being served under ARPANES, but was going to generate some funding under this. The rest of that money went to, or goes to, what we call priority 2 schools. That's the reimbursement fund. It's only reimbursements for the 21-22 school year. It ends on September 30th of 2023, but I'm assuming that if you're doing reimbursements for the school year that we're in right now, you will be done with that well before 2023. There is some hope that we will be able to change that to to be funded the same as ARPANES and have the same uses and not be reimbursement. But for right now, that fund, that Gear 2 Priority 2, is only for reimbursement. You cannot use it for services going forward. Third pot of money is the GAP assistance. We've talked a little bit about that as well. It's just for the schools who got less in PPP than they would have gotten in EANS 1 and 2 combined. I would say that Jen's been very fair to you guys in that she has used the final allocations, which is always a higher per pupil amount, which generates a higher number for all of you in EANS, which will make you look better relative to what you would have gotten in PPP. Okay, so here's our timeline. We're right in the middle of that timeline. We would really like to have your budgets and stuff back by the first Friday in June. I think June 3rd is first Friday in June, particularly if you're going to be asking for services to start in the summer or even when school starts in the fall, because all of that takes a little bit of lead time. The people from Facts will talk about that a little bit when we get into the end of the deal. You will notice at the bottom of that timeline, September 20th of 2023, all of the Gear 2 and GAP services, because they come from a different grant that ended in 2023. That's when those 3 grants will cut off for expenditures. And September 20th is the real date for that, not September 30th. And the reason being that all of the stuff that we compile then has to go to the Department of Labor, and because of the way those contracts were written. So know that if you're going to be pushing the deadlines with those sets of funds. And here is just a little summary of the schools. We have 154 schools, direct assistance, still just the one school who was not served under ARP, but will get money under the Gear 2. 155 schools qualify for the reimbursement, which is everybody who got ARPENS and the one direct assistance school. We had 8 who got GAP. And so the rest either didn't qualify because of the ratio of GAP and EANS funds or declined to participate in the grant. So we have 3 important resources. They will be on the website in addition to the timeline and the details, but we have the allocations will be up. There are a couple of fact sheets and lists of allowable activities, which hopefully will help you as you make decisions with the things that you're going to request for funding. All of the same uses and all of those things as we had with the first round. Remember, equipment that modifies the building and those kinds of things are not allowed. In this situation, you can't buy new windows, but you can replace the windows that are there. You can't put in air conditioning, rooftop units, or any of those kinds of things. Remember that at the end of this grant period, there's a chance that the federal government will make us come back in and retrieve any things that we have bought for you. So be careful what you're buying. Some things can depreciate out over 2 or 3 years. If you buy 1,000 laptops on September 25th of 2024, it's hard to just say those depreciated in 5 days. So we might want to stay away from those kinds of purchases. And before we turn it over to, before I turn over facts, does anybody have any questions? Is there anything in the chat I need to answer at this time?
Nothing in the chat so far.
Okay, that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth Shelton from Facts, and this was their portion of the show. And I will stop sharing, and you can have the screen.
Hello, and we did just get one question in on the chat, so I'm just going to look at that before I start talking. When do we anticipate the earliest we would be able to order something for use at the start of the 22-23 school year under EANS 2? So as soon as we get those final allocations, Sarah's will address that, the purchasing flow when we get to the budget workbook and the process portion of that. So we'll get an answer for you by the end of the session, hopefully. But hello again, Elizabeth Shelton, and I am effectively the administrator on the fact side of this contract with the state. Just wanted to make sure that you guys are aware. Again, we are your fiscal agent provider, so that means that anything you do under EANS will flow through us. It does not mean you have to use us for services, but we do provide an awful lot of services relating to this grant and to benefit your schools. And that's what we have others on the team to be able to provide that information to you. Our role, again, is really to be that frontline questions between the school and the district. We have been meeting very regularly throughout this process with Jim and Jen, and can funnel questions to them pretty quickly to get answers and make sure that we have all of your workbooks approved and amendments approved. But that our role is really to help facilitate this contract, facilitate those questions, make sure things run smoothly, and make sure that we are on the same page with what the state requires and what the federal government is asking from an audit perspective. Again, want to thank Jim and the Nebraska Department of Education and Jen, who's not here, but I know she's been very, very, very busy making sure that this gets executed. We do work with a lot of states across the country, and I know I said this on the last webinar, but I want to say it again. Nebraska is very generous with its support of non-public schools. And you see that with the additional funding available as well. So I will turn it over to Sarah Noble and her team, and then we will have additional FACTS individuals on this call to help you explain some of the services. But Sarah Noble.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. Great to see everyone. Good morning. We're happy to get the next steps in motion. So I am Sarah Noble. I'm the manager of the Fiscal Agent Service Team and Financial Operations, and that means that I lead the Partner Success Manager team that many of you know and have worked with closely. So they are also all on this call and excited to be here. You will get to see their faces in a couple slides here. So a couple things that I wanted to just talk about high level is that really, as I mentioned in previous meetings, the process and the flow of information that you are used to will not be changing overall, but we have made a few improvements just based on our experience over the last year. One thing that we are doing with payments is we are sending notifications to the school of when we receive funds from NDE, a list of the vendors that we have the money for that will be paid within the next 7 to 10 days. So I believe a round of those notifications is also coming out. And if you see on there, we should be listing multiple contacts at the school. Please let us know. We're happy to send that to whoever would be relevant at the school. We've also been sending out some regular notices, just notifying the schools of payments pending. So you know that your request has gone fully through our process, and we are just pending the release of funds from NDE to send those out to the vendors. So just trying to keep that communication open so that everyone understands kind of what's going on and the process flow. Right now, everyone's completed the application and we are moving into the next step of the workbook phase. After the workbook, we'll still have dynamic forms, spend down reports, and amendments, similar processes again to what you're used to. So the workbook process, I am actually going to jump into the workbook. And again, this is very similar to what we used with round one. The biggest difference that you will see is that if you are a school receiving funds from multiple funding groups, you will have one tab per funding source. And we are required to do reporting and to track everything separately. So we do have to keep those allocations separate and identify that on the workbook and throughout the process so that we can provide the necessary reports that are going to be required. Overall, again, you're going to see those categories, you're going to see where you can populate the amount, you're going to be selecting objectives. And the other thing I wanted to highlight about this screen here is the sentence explanation. So please, if you are submitting this to us and we have questions, we are happy to talk with you on the phone or, kind of go back and forth to really make sure that the description and explanation is what we need to approve the request. But if you are able to provide that information up front, it can help streamline the process and just overall make things flow smoothly. So please use this box to explain how the request will be used and specifically how it is relating to that category in means funding. And I think I was looking at these questions. So as far as the deadline for June 3rd, that is based on the allocations being sent today. And then our team will be creating these workbooks over the next 2 days. So you should receive your workbook by end of day on Friday. So that gives you, I think it's like about 4 weeks to get the workbook completed. If you have any issues with that deadline, please reach out to us directly so we can address those concerns with you. You'll still see the same familiar categories and examples tab. We also have some coaching and PD information for your reference. But again, I want to highlight this categories because as you're looking at the actual budget worksheet, if you need more details on the categories, you can always pop over here and then try and tie your description to these specific categories. That makes it very helpful for us to identify if the item requested is reasonable within needs funding. And that's a great question, Dr. Tui. No, the workbook, the current workbook will not be combined with this new workbook. So those will still be separate. And if you need to do an amendment on EANS 1 workbook, the process would stay the same. And then we would have a separate workbook for round 2 and the additional funding. So then the next step is the dynamic form review. And this is going to come after you complete your workbook, you return it to us, it goes through the review and approval process, and you receive notification that your budget has been approved. Now, as far as the timeline goes, kind of going to the first question in the chat, like it says, when do we anticipate the earliest we will be able to order something? This is going to be all depending on how quickly you are able to complete your workbook. So if you get your workbook on Friday, you work all weekend on it, submit it to us Monday, we're going to be able to get that approved much faster than if you do take until that June 3rd deadline. Whether that's good or bad, I think each scenario is fine, but it will all depend on that. So we anticipate that you should have the ability in June to put in orders for the next school year. Once you receive that your workbook is approved, you will receive the next steps for the dynamic form process. And again, that's the same process that we're currently using. We do ask that you have one account per person, but a school could have multiple accounts. And if you are designating an individual to assist you with this process, please let us know, because we do keep a list of contacts for the school. And then we are verifying to make sure that that individual is approved to submit requests on behalf of your school. So just kind of a note about that. The first thing is, once the school submits the request, the partner success management team is reviewing that request. If they have questions or if there are issues with the request, maybe the invoice says $5,000, the request says $4,900, those numbers must match. So the request would be returned to the school to be updated. And we do send those notifications via email. If the request looks fine, the PSM will approve. There is a second level review and approval. Every request that comes in, we are checking the workbook and we are checking the spend down to make sure that everything matches. So requests that come into dynamic forms must be on an approved workbook, and the spend down must show that the allocation is available for that item as well. Every week, our accounting team batches those requests and creates an invoice and sends that to the NDE team to review and then release funds to FactSed. Once we receive the payment, then we are pushing out those payments to vendors. Our accounting team only sends payments on Thursdays. So depending on when we receive the funds from NDE, it can kind of affect the timing of how quickly those payments go out, but it is within 7 to 10 days of receiving the funds. And then this is kind of where those notifications that I mentioned are coming into play. So along that process, you can expect to hear from your PSM team if you have either payments we are waiting for the funds to release to the vendors, or once we receive those funds, we will send you a list of all the vendors and the amounts that they will be paid. Now, a couple updates in the dynamic form process. Again, overall, it will be very much the same. It is going to be the same link that you're using now, but we have added in a field that is called payee/vendor email address. Now, with this email address, if you have a contact at from where you're submitting the invoice, our accounting team would like to reach out to that contact to get them set up for direct deposit. So we don't want to put you in the middle. We're happy to reach out directly to the vendor, but they are going to receive an email from our accounting team with a form that they can complete to be set up for direct deposit. And again, that's just kind of helping speed up the processing time from when we receive the funds to when they're actually receiving payment. The other big thing that you will see is we are going to be asking for the funding source. So you may have some requests that bridge kind of over multiple funding sources, and we are going to need to identify those on the request because we need to be able to track that and report based on those specific allocations. I don't anticipate that this will be, too complicated, but please reach out to us if you have any questions or if you need clarifying information on that piece. And then as far as the spend downs go, you should be receiving monthly spend down notification reports. This is going to show all of the requests that you have submitted to us. If we have invoiced the state, it's going to combine any employees that you have onboarded through fax as well, show any POs that you have and the balance remaining, kind of just a consolidated report of your allocation and the spent against that. If you are not receiving those emails or if you need to add an additional contact, please let us know. We can send it to multiple people, but once a month you'll get these reports. And then once we move forward with the additional funding sources, you would receive one report per funding source. So that way you can help track those allocations separately as well. And then that brings me to the wonderful PSM team. So Shannon, E, and Megan are on the line today. Again, you are probably very familiar with these individuals if you've reached out for assistance or maybe you've received an email from them. Each school does have a designated PSM or partner success manager that is assigned to the school to assist with any questions, kind of do some active reach out and communication, just so you know where you're at in the process. You can see that I've kind of listed out just like 4 things, but there's much more they do. Workbook approvals, dynamic form processes, amendment requests, and spend down questions. So at this time, I can let that team come off of mute and say hello, and then they have a little bit they want to share about a project that they've been working on to just help the schools as we move forward with this.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Hi, good morning. Good to see everyone.
All right, are we ready to go to the next slide?
We're ready.
Very good.
Okay, so as Sarah mentioned, we have been working on a project that will be through a platform called On24. Excuse me. We will be we've made these tutorial videos for everyone to follow for how to submit payment requests, reimbursement requests, purchase order requests, and resource or credit card requests. It basically has screenshots of the dynamic form process with our voiceovers of kind of explaining what we need in each field, the importance of the process, and that sort of thing, just so you folks can get a little bit more comfortable with completing it in its entirety, so we don't have to return the forms and say, oh, this is why we're returning it because, like Sarah mentioned, the invoice number or the invoice amount doesn't totally match what is submitted on the dynamic form, that sort of thing. We will also, through On24, you'll gain access to some documents. They won't be the video tutorials, but the documents will be helpful for you to kind of go step by step on some of the processes that we have, just so that it's handy for you guys to have. You can access it 24/7 whenever you need to have that refresher and get that help through our different processes. So next slide, please. So when we are ready to launch the On24 project, you will get a few things. On the right-hand side, you can see an example of what the email will look like that you will receive. It will list the different options that you have for the webcast, and you can join the webinar through the links provided in the email. And then you'll be taken to the registration form that's there on the left-hand side. You can select just one or all. We recommend going through all just for a refresher, but you can select any webcast that you want to participate in, and then fill out the brief registration form with contact information, that sort of thing, and then click register. So you can go to the next one, please. And then once you're in the On24 platform, this is what you can expect it to look like. This is blank though, so it doesn't give us too much detail, but you will see on the bottom left-hand corner a little picture of either myself or E, who will be presenting the information to you, our little headshot and bio. The presentation itself will be right there in the middle. And then you can even ask some questions on the right-hand side. Because these aren't live demonstrations, we won't be able to necessarily answer them in real time, but we will receive those questions and be able to get back to you with the answers as quickly as possible. And then below that, where the links section is, that's where you can access the helpful documents that we'll have and any other links that we think is pertinent to that particular presentation. Next slide, please. And then we have our regional vice president and sales support coordinator, Jeremy and Scott. So I think this is when they'll get to have the baton and continue. But please don't hesitate to reach out to our PSM team with any questions about our processes, or if the On24 platform is confusing, or anything that you need, we're here and happy to help. So don't hesitate to reach out. Our emails hopefully have been coming to your inboxes. We have received a little bit of word that they can tend to go to a junk or a spam folder. So just search for our names at faxmgt.com in your inbox, and you should be able to find those. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Megan. Sorry to just jump in quick. We will be monitoring the chat too. So it looks like there's been some conversation, but if anyone has questions, continue to use that chat. We'll drop in our email addresses as well. So excited to hear from everyone. And yes, we'll pass it off to Jeremy and Scott. It looks like they were coordinating today, wearing their matching gray. So I like that and I appreciate it. And thank you so much to everyone.
It's uniform day. Thanks, Sarah. So it sounds like you're doing okay. Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you again. Since our last time we got together to launch the EANS 2 process, there's been a lot going on, obviously, as EANS 1 is also finishing its first year, and we're rolling into services for next year under EANS 1 and planning simultaneously. We know you're super busy doing all of this for EANS 2. So we want to be as helpful as possible, obviously, but we're going to transition a little bit from the fiscal management team that Sarah manages on the processes and spending the funds and purchasing and all of those fun things to a little bit more of a direct conversation on services. So Sarah, if you don't mind getting rid of your share screen, we'll have Susan jump on with her slide deck. And while they're doing that, I just wanted to, again, if you weren't on the presentation about a little over a month ago, I wanted to remind everybody that Scott and I will be taking over all of your EANS services planning and needs for putting additional staffing into place, but also for renewals from EANS 1. So Scott's been reaching out to the schools that have current services, primarily staffing, for the, to basically look at what's going on for next year, what the renewal process looks like, and getting new proposals out to you. If you have current services and have not connected with Scott and I, please do so as quickly as possible so that we can re-up your staffing for next year and get that process started right away. Just as soon as we know that your EANS 1 allocation still allows for those funds, we can go ahead and put that into place now. If you're going to be using EANS 2 money to supplement your staffing for next year, the only issue there would be waiting until your approval of your workbook is complete, but we should have everything else in place up to that point so that we can go ahead and start the hiring once we have that confirmation. I'm going to actually transition us over to our expert in strategic planning for the use of federal programs that's been presenting with me all across the Midwest, but has been working extensively with private schools. Her background is in Catholic education and in private schools across the country, all the way from LA to New York and everywhere in between. She is our director of support services, instructional services, I should say, and also our coaching for instructional coaching and leadership coaching. Dr. Susan Abeline comes to FACS. I think she's been here almost a couple of years now, and she has a wealth of knowledge that one of those obvious examples where she's forgotten more than I'll ever know. But she's here today at the request of the leadership across the state and the leadership across the state, the NDE and our FACS company, to talk to you just about some ideas on how to, well, some ideas, but also some ways to consider planning for your immediate and long-term needs. Now that you have multiple buckets of federal programs that coincide with your title, along with your EANS 1, and now your additional options out of EANS 2, the supplemental funds, and the other categories that Jim has been talking about. So all of that can be confusing. A lot of it is, where do I go? What do I do with all of these dollars? I get that a lot from principals. So at this point, I'm going to have Susan walk through some ideas on just ways that you might consider putting these dollars into good use, both immediately and for long term. So with that, I'll turn it over to Susan, and I'll come back at the end. Thank you, Dr. Abeline, for being here.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it. And good to be with everybody again today. So when it comes to EANS, and I, you know, for some of you, this may be the second time that you're seeing some similar slides. And for others, it may be the first time that you're seeing these slides. But even if it is the second time, you know, time has passed since that previous presentation about EANS and EANS 2. And, you know, I'm sure, you know, in between the many things that are on the leader's plate, you know, you've thought about what can I do to use this EANS funding so it addresses the immediate needs of my students as well as has a lasting impact on my school. And so what we're looking at again today is just an opportunity to revisit some of these ideas, to use your EANS fund for that immediate impact and that lasting impact. So, so the essential question kind of driving this strategy is, how will you know if EANS mattered? And as Jeremy said, you know, it's certainly an opportunity to use your EANS funds, but as you're kind of creating this strategic plan for the next 2 years, you know, to think about, well, my title funds pay for this and my EANS funds can pay for something else, and vice versa. So essentially what we're looking for is, what's that vision for, you know, end of summer 2024, so 2 years from now. You know, where do you want to see your students and where do you want to see your faculty and staff in terms of that vision for excellence for your school? And so, so again, we don't want to be reactionary. We do want to take a little bit of a timeout. If you've been using your EANS funds for staffing or professional development, you know, it's probably good to just take a timeout and say, you know, did it matter? You know, did what I used my EANS funds for in these last, you know, 3, 4, 5 months, did it matter? Did it have an impact on my current students? Did it have an impact on my teachers? And if so, what was it, right? And do we want to continue that? So we want to take a time out, slow down, use our data to figure out what's worked so far, and then use our data to plan for this summer, for the next 3 summers, and then for the next 2 school years. And then again, you know, just be mindful of initiative itis. There's certainly a lot of great things that we can do in our schools. And we certainly don't want to overwhelm our students or our teachers. And so let's develop a plan that's really going to, again, manifest that vision for excellence. If 2 years from now, you want to be a blended learning STEM school, then let's work on that for 2 years. If 2 years from now, you want to close the gaps so that every student is on grade level, then let's work on that for 2 years. So we're thinking about, what can we do for our students? What can we do for our faculty and staff so that at the end of these 2 years, we know that EANS has truly made a difference. And so there's, certainly things that you can do to address those immediate needs of your students. Again, using your EANS funding, because your EANS funding, unlike Title I, is available to impact all of your students. We know that there are certain parameters that we're required to meet with regard to Title I student services, but with EANS, we can meet the needs of all of our students. So to address immediate needs from the FactSed side, we can provide certain programming and materials. Certainly summer school is an option with reading, math, and STEM for your K-12 students. We also are offering a summer bridge program this summer. We're really excited about it. It's an 8-module summer bridge that includes for those middle schoolers going into high school. So this would be a program run either at the elementary school, 7th or 8th grade as students are exiting out, or at the high school, 8th or 9th grade, whatever time your high school start. And the idea of Summer Bridge is that they have the necessary study skills, organizational skills, executive functioning skills, as well as they have those firm foundations in math and reading for informational text, reading for literature, and writing skills necessary to go into high school, that every student coming in has those foundational skills that they need to be successful in high school. We think this is very important for our students as a result of the pandemic, and again, great efforts by schools and teachers to meet the needs of students throughout the pandemic. But a summer bridge is an opportunity to ensure that every kid has that great next start for high school. FactSed, we're also offering a lot of enrichment packages for students. I'll share those, as well as parent and family engagement events. I'll share those on the next slide. And then, of course, school year interventions, whether you're pushing into the classroom, you'll notice some of those staffing options: push-in specialists, interventionists, lead interventionists, counselors, tutors, right? Those are all positions that with that FactSed support, we put our interventionists, all of our teachers, in cohorts, and we meet with those cohorts on a regular basis to make sure that they have the support that they need to be successful in the classroom. In addition, some programming and materials, ed tech, and we also offer our own literacy intensive as well for students, again, to close those gaps. In terms of staffing, I've mentioned some of the interventionist position. We also support ed tech site-based coaches that work not only with the technology, the software, et cetera, but also the data. So educational technologists who can help support looking at data across the curriculum and how to manage that data through your SIS. We train those coaches, train and support those site-based coaches. And then some schools are going with parent engagement support specialists, again, partnering with the parents to close those achievement gaps. And at FactSed, we certainly would offer parents access to our parent engagement resources. So I mentioned, summer and what that can look like in terms of enrichment and parent engagement. So, our core program is pretty, fundamental. It's early literacy and reading, K-12, mathematics K-12, and STEM K-12. So if you're looking for a summer program, whether it's 2 weeks, to up to 6 weeks, you can use your EANS funding and even some of your title funds for eligible students for that summer school program. And then we offer a variety of enrichment programs. You can see the list there, a lot of STEAM, STEM, engineering, algebra prep, and then parent engagement. So we're really excited to share these new modules for parent engagement events at your school site. These include PowerPoint handouts, activity guide for anyone on campus to lead these parent engagement events at your school site. In terms of professional learning, again, some of you have seen these quotes before, but when it comes to professional learning, I'll let you read it on your own there. But when it comes to professional learning, what we know is that, one and done PD really has no impact on students. So we want to have professional development that allows teachers to learn, practice, learn, practice, learn, practice, right? And they go through that cycle over the course of a period of time. That, again, the quote here, the duration of PD must be significant and ongoing. So I think that's what's important to us at FactSed, and so I'm going to share some different PD packages that are certainly not one and done, but allow for that opportunity for teachers to implement, reflect on that implementation, work with their presenter to problem solve implementation, and again, get more professional development, implement and problem solve, get more professional development, implement and problem solve. We don't want to overwhelm our teachers, right? They've got lots on their plates. There's limited PD time in the school calendar. So again, that's where we want to be strategic when we're thinking about what are the opportunities that we want to offer our teachers for that lasting impact. So again, 2 years from now, using your 3 summers as well as your 2 school years, what's that professional development that you want yourself and your teachers to engage in, so that you can say at the end of these 2 years, EANS mattered. Our teachers got smarter, the culture in our school improved. This is one of the programs that really defines us. So I'm going to start with that first column. Tiffany Wilbur, my colleague in professional development, she and her team, they develop custom built sessions. So when we're talking about those sessions that happen over the course of the school year, these sessions are customized to meet the needs of the school or group of schools that she and her team are working with. And you can see in that first column that they're tailored, they're research-based, they're relevant to the needs at your site. And again, they can be delivered on site through webinars and with pop-up coaching. Pop-up coaching is when we do a presentation, and then in between those multiple presentations, we make the presenter available to the teachers, so that, again, as the teachers are implementing, they can meet with that presenter, do a little bit of problem solving in between those professional development sessions. Lots of different PD you can see in that center column. Depending on your state, teachers can be stipended for work outside of contracted hours. So if they're not under contract in the summer after school hours, they can be stipended for their time. And then that second note at the bottom of the center column, again, we would consider if you're a FactSed SIS school, you might consider using that super user training for your data. Again, we need really good data to track the progress of our students over the course of these 5 parts of our timeline here. So that super user training can be provided for schools as well to ensure they're using their SIS to its maximum to support student teaching, student learning. And then lastly, on this slide, we have 3 featured partners of FactSed. Loyola Marymount University, they deliver our blended learning STEM program that, again, if 2 years from now you want to see yourself as a certified blended learning STEM school through LMU, it's, I believe, 21 hours of professional development with coaching in between. Then Confianza is another partner of ours. If you serve an ELL population, Confianza would be a great partner to work with. They support academic language learning across the curriculum. Certainly goes beyond just supporting ELL students, but actually all students can benefit from Confianza and the PD that the teachers receive. And then Cognito is social emotional learning support for students and training for teachers. So Cognito is a third featured partner. So in terms of professional development, again, just to kind of sum up the number of offerings that we have at FactSed, you can see them on the left side of your screen: the data-informed leadership, new principal, new teacher training, early childhood teaching and learning, again, ensuring that we're closing those gaps. And then you can see very kind of popular topic right now, SEL and mental health. Of course, something to establish within a school is that social emotional training for faculty. Again, if 2 years from now, you want to ensure that all of your teachers have that deep level of training, SEL may be the way to go in terms of training and supporting your teachers. And then on the right side of your screen, you see other professional development as well as pop-up coaching in these areas in terms of literacy, math, college and career readiness, all good options for professional development. Again, it's just, where do you want to see yourself at the end of these 2 years? And then I'll finish it up with coaching. Coaching is certainly an option. In that first column, you see we offer leadership coaching and teacher coaching. All of our coaching is virtual. However, we're more than happy to do some site-based visits as well, to either kick off a leadership or teacher coaching project, or to combine with a virtual coaching. So with leadership coaching, we offer 5 to 8 sessions per cycle. A cycle generally runs a semester. And so, if you're doing 8 cycles over 16 weeks, it's essentially a bi-weekly coaching experience. Teacher coaching runs in 6-week cycles. Teachers create a goal, develop an outcome aligned to student learning. And over the course of that 6-week cycle, the coach and the teacher are working through video and through virtual conversation to meet or exceed that goal in 6 weeks. We offer a number of toolkits. Every toolkit, there's a toolkit that's assigned to every 6-week coaching cycle. These toolkits are in that last column. There's a number of them listed there, anything from, for your new teachers, unit planning, lesson planning design, all the way through SEL, ELL, executive functioning, honors, supporting students across the curriculum as well. So we offer a lot of different toolkits. They're essentially, the best practices associated with that area of teaching. And then in terms of leadership coaching, that center column, for leaders, lots of different leaders that we're coaching, from principals, assistant principals, department chairs, in a number of areas, including executive coaching, time management, communications, problem solving, strategic planning, as well as instructional leadership. So you can see the list there. We are doing a lot with curriculum adoption. Schools that received significant dollars from EANS are really taking advantage of the opportunity to plan for curriculum adoption. So we're able to facilitate that process for schools as well. So a couple of sample plans. This is a sample plan for an elementary level, offering summer school. You can see that across the 3 summers that benefit students as well as teachers, if teachers are allowed to receive a stipend for summer school. It's a great opportunity for your teachers. And then in terms of enrichment, I've shared this arts and PE enrichment. These are with our partners, Arts Attack and STEM Sports. These are, again, great opportunities, whether you're doing a summer school and adding on to it, or you just want to do enrichment over the summer. These are 2 great examples of enrichment activities to continue the learning through arts and PE. And then in terms of those summers, using that summer for redesigning instructional plans or curriculum adoption. You can see I've got that over the first 2 summers, 22 and 23. And then in summer 24, again, thinking strategically, have I hired any new teachers that I need to catch up on those newly adopted curricula or instructional plans? During the school year, you'll notice I've put in some push-in specialists. Those are a great option for schools to consider, because with Title I, it's pull out. With EANS, we can actually push in, which means we can have specialists in the classroom working directly with students. So you can imagine perhaps having a K-2 K-5 reading specialist in the classroom working with small groups, or a math specialist working with fluency practice, K-8, just being in the classroom, working with students. You know, the research shows about 10 minutes a day, every day, students can close those fluency gaps very quickly with that repetition of practice. So push-in specialists are a great option. And then for your teachers, again, thinking strategically over 2 years, I've got data analysis in 22-23, and then differentiation in 23-24. So learning how to look at data in 22-23, and then what do we do with data in 23-24. You can imagine after a full year, full 2 years of that professional development, where's your school going to be in terms of being able to look at data and use it to impact teaching and learning. And then what's the gift to the principal here during this time, right, is you're going to get your own instructional leadership coaching in data, your instructional leadership coaching and walkthroughs and supervision to ensure that differentiation is happening and happening well in the classroom. So just some thoughts in terms of a sample elementary plan. And then if there are any high school folks on this call, here's an example of a sample high school plan. Again, those summers have a bridge, that bridge program with study skills, math, and ELA, perhaps an engineering week. Again, if 2 years from now, I wanted to reimagine my high school and say, you know what, we are going to be that STEM school that we always wanted to be, to prepare our students for college and the many careers in STEM. And so we're going to invest in that PD over the next couple of years with STEM curriculum adoption, STEM intervention and enrichment adoption. And then, you know what, in the summer of 2024, I don't want to forget the humanities. I'm doing an ELA curriculum adoption that summer. During the school year, I want to focus again on SEL for my high school students, as well as algebra, science, STEM, and maybe some assessment design and use of data design for my high school. This plan is kind of a mashup between two high schools that I'm currently helping them design their strategic plans for their use of their EANS funds. So it's really happening out there. There are schools that are designing these kinds of plans and thinking through, you know, where do they want to see themselves in 2 years. So I'll turn it back over to Jeremy and Scott to bring us home.
Thanks, Susan. Well, thank you for being here. That's, I know, a lot of information in 20 minutes, but it's great information, and that information doesn't stop here. If you would like to start looking at services and looking at different ways that you might be putting these plans together, if you want to further have a conversation with me and Susan, or me and Tiffany, depending on what the services are that you're wanting to consider, just let me know. The process is simple to get to requesting services, or just continuing the exploration of what services might be best for your school. That free consultation with us happens probably about half the time that I spend day to day, is just providing consultation to principals on what they might do with their funds or different service options that they have available, working with LEAs, working with all sorts of different people. So that is always an option for you. And you can just reach out to me. You can reach out to Scott, your partner success managers. If all else fails and you can't remember my email or Scott's email, you can reach out to them and they will connect you with us for services. But anything related to services for instructional staffing, if it's just instructional staffing, for the most part, Scott will take care of most of that. If there's a blended learning component that we're going to add into staffing to close gaps and provide resources and everything that goes with the staffing, then I will be involved, along with professional development and coaching. Depending on what your specific needs are, again, we customize everything that we do. So as the conversation continues to go on a school by school basis, then we'll just I'll pull in the right people to build what that looks like and get that to you in a proposal form for you to review and get things started. It's that simple. So with that, I'm going to, Susan, if you don't mind just advancing to the last slide, just a kind of a review on Scott's and my contacts. We are available to you at any point. Don't hesitate to reach out. If you have questions that pertain to Susan's presentation today, we'll also have her forward this presentation to Jim as well, so he can post it alongside his slides from today's meeting. That's going to be up, also posted on the state's website. And that way you have access to it as kind of a one-stop shop on the website. So if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're really here to serve you and make sure that you have your immediate and long-term needs met, and that you're able to utilize these funds to really move the needle for your students and your staff. So with that, Jim, do you have anything left that you wanted to add to services or anything else? I'll turn it back over to you. That fancy mute button first.
My cursor did not want to go where my mouse was moving it. Anyway, thanks, Jeremy and Elizabeth and Sarah and people, all you guys from FACS, for all the stuff that you're doing for us on this thing. There's a couple of things as I noticed things in the chat or people emailed me stuff. The June 3rd date, we really want to keep that pretty firm, although you may request an extension if you need to, just so that we know that we're not going to get bombarded with a bunch of stuff as school's getting ready to start first part of August. And also, if you have any, I'm going to throw Eanes or FACS, the team under, I'm going to throw a little extra work here, but I have a couple questions from people who are not comfortable with the process. And I know that in some of your schools, not only are you the third grade teacher, you're the fourth grade teacher and the principal and the secretary and cleaning the place at night too after everyone leaves. And so if you're not comfortable with the process and all the workbooks and all that stuff, please reach out to the people from FACS, because they're happy to help you with this stuff. They know the stuff that they're talking about on all of the things that you are expected. So, please feel free to reach out to them. And I guess the last thing I just briefly, at 7:48 yesterday morning, we got the last of the clean data for people's free and reduced counts. And so we were able to get the allocations done. And by we, I mean Jen. I think she must, based on the timestamps on her email, she must do her best work between 2 and 3 in the morning. It's either that or she just times them to go out. So we think she's working at 2 in the morning. I'm not sure which way that works. But anyway, she's done a really good job with this process. And I know that she would have liked to have been here this morning, but she did have a family thing. So we will get that taken care of. I have an email queued up to send to all of you with your allocations, and that hopefully will go up on the website shortly. FACS, I believe, has the allocations, and so they will be working the next couple of days on populating workbooks. I think when they get your stuff done, they will let you know, and we should be ready to roll, I hope. So is there anything else before we call it a day? And I would say that Sarah did remember to hit record, so this meeting is recorded. If it hadn't been for her, it would not be recorded.
Yep. Glad to be the keeper of the record button. That's good.
All right, we're going to call her today. A morning. Thank you all very much. Remember to email and ask if you have questions. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.